Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final day of the ASU's Digital Trust Summit, coordinated by the ASU's Technology Office. I'm going to stop sharing here. My name is Deepak Kulkarni, and I'm your Zoom host for this session. I work with the product and program management team at ASU's Technology Office as a project manager. My co-host for this session is Rashi. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Rashi?
Hi, my name is Rashi Gupta, and I am also your Zoom co-host. I'm currently enrolled at Barrett and will be starting my first year in the fall. We will be monitoring the chat and be here for technical support during the session. But before we get started, we have a few reminders and announcements. We'd like to remind you that the chat feature is turned on and ready for you to submit your questions. The session is being recorded, and if you would like not to be recorded, please feel free to turn off your camera at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashi. So remember to stay connected and continue to stay connected and use our hashtag Digital Trust Summit on LinkedIn. We also have the Slack channel for our Digital Trust Lobby where you can continue the conversation. And with that, we can start the session. I'd like to introduce you to our facilitator for this TLN Unconference 2.0, Kate Giovacchini. She's a managing director of the Digital Trust Initiatives at ASU. So Kate, take over.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces and see some new faces too, as we dive back into the Trusted Learner Network. It's been more than a year, and boy, how have our circumstances changed. Fingers crossed that when we do TLN Unconference 3.0, we'll be able to all get together in person, preferably not in the middle of summer. So we will be conscious of the timing there. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen to introduce my co-facilitators and tell you a little bit about what to expect. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 4 things, and the third thing is the biggest and the brightest. But we'll start off with some intros and context. We'll do some TLN updates for you. So we've done some phenomenal research over the past year, and we're also going to be providing some exciting announcements. Then we'll jump into the unconference. So for our introverts, brace yourself now, because we will be going into breakout sessions that are going to be really tremendous. And we're going to have really open, frank conversations about where we see the digital credential space now. Then we'll come back together for a very brief report back on big ideas and tell you a little bit about what to expect next. So here we go. Introductions and context. It is my great pleasure to introduce you all to our wonderful TLN hosts. So we have Lev Gonick, the Chief Information Officer, Donna Kidwell, the Chief Information Security and Digital Trust Officer, myself, no further introductions required, and Michelle Watt, our wonderful Trusted Learner Network product owner. With that being said, what I'd like to do is turn the reins over to Lev and Donna here for some words about the TLN. And what to expect moving forward. So Donna and Lev, please feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Kate, and hi to everybody. As Kate indicated, it's been actually since March the 3rd of 2020, literally 2 weeks before the world got turned upside down, a number of us were together to launch the idea of a Trusted Learner Network. After actually about a year of development before we actually hosted a gathering at the SkySong campus here at ASU. So I want to welcome back those of you who were part of that particular gathering, and share with you that in the interim period of time, we have not been resting on our laurels. As Kate indicated, we've actually conducted, with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we've actually conducted some very important work, which we're going to review today, in terms of preparing what we hope will be an accelerated path for further development of the Trusted Learner Network, going into the next several years. And want to be sure to share that we've asked Kate, and she's graciously agreed to actually be, in addition to her HR title, also the managing director of the TLN activity itself. And that actually gives us one of the key outcomes that we've actually come to and was recommended through that research activity to actually have an owner in the sense of a community builder, an engagement partner, someone to facilitate many of the technical things that we want to address together. Let me just say one last word before turning to Donna, because for those of you who were not with us back in March of 2020, it's very important, and again, you're going to see this in just a bit in detail. The TLN is a different kind of gathering. Yes, we're interested in technical issues. In fact, we're very interested in the framework, the technical stack that we want to develop. Yes, we're very interested in several subject areas like learning records and digital credentials. That's true. Those are really important as well. But the TLN actually has a number of principles that are not particularly related to technology or to specific traditional university products. The TLN was, at least in part, founded on the principle of learner agency. The idea of leveraging technology as it is maturing in this chapter in the life of the planet and of humanity, as the technology is maturing, to actually begin to develop a networked approach to supporting learner agency, by which I mean, and I think, again, the TLN has always meant, providing an opportunity for learners to help co-design, to actually co-experience, be participating in peer and other kinds of assessments, and to be able to represent their learning outcomes through the distributed ledger technologies that are part of the TLN's technical stack, that includes several of the traditional things that universities like to do, like a learning record of the traditional variety and or credentials of the traditional variety, but also to lean into and to support a community-wide, a national and international collaboration to build out capacity, to build out a architecture to support the broad ways in which we and our learners that are around us actually experience life, both while they're with us, before they're with us, and after they leave us. If by us we mean the role of universities and colleges, and that is a very important differentiator. Right now, we are trying to do a whole lot more than provide a rhetorical interest in the learner-centered approach, the learner agency approach. I would say that it remains the bedrock of what we understand to be at once both where the learners are, as well as ultimately where we as institutions need to actually evolve to through an accelerated guide path in order to be of service to the learners of the future. So again, thank you so much for joining us for this unconference, which is a terrific way of exploring these and other topics. Again, in our presentations, you'll hear others of the key principles that are in play. And with that, you have all met Donna Kidwell, but I invite her to segue us into the next part of our conversation.
Oh, thank you, Lev. I don't know how to follow that though. Plus 1,000. There's lots of that in the chat. I do want to emphasize, and I think if you pull a bit of a thread from the conversations that we've heard, whether that's Joanna and Jim or Marcus and Ada or the students themselves yesterday morning, this resonance between learning agency design and then the technical capabilities that we're talking about are an extraordinary opportunity to deal with some real systemic equity and access issues. And so what an incredible time to be able to do that. The awareness in the broader community, the discussion of the fact that the digital divide isn't a problem that some of us solved in the 90s. Like, this sits inside of the fabric of that conversation, which I just think is extraordinary and gives us a different kind of wind in our sails for the work that we're going to be doing for the next hour and a half. And I'm really mindful that we've got a lot that we're going to try to do in the next hour and a half. So Kate, I will hand this back over to you to lead us on. And a big thank you to Kate and Michelle for all of the work that's gone into this. like seriously. It's just been incredible. And, you know, oh, and happy birthday, Kate.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so thank you, Lev and Donna. So appreciate those words there that really help set up what we envision as the vision of the Trusted Learner Network. I'm going to take us back to the slides. I wish there was a way where we could better share it, where I could better share this space with the slide deck, but this is where we're at. So to re-emphasize, the vision of the TLN is this, right? To establish an independent, self-governed, distributed network that can serve as a utility to learners, institutions, employers, and credential issuers by housing validated and immutable records of learning that can then be shared. That's the big picture. How do we create a network that can benefit everybody that exists in this ecosystem and allow for the co-ownership or the sort of key empowerment to exist at the student level? I'm going to go really briefly through our TLN principles. These have been growing and changing as we have, after we initially sort of conceptualized the TLN. But just to walk through these, we're talking about consent as being a key piece of this equity. That identity is a crucial component for every learner to be able to take control of their own future. We talk about open source really as an extension of equity, right? The technologies that we develop must be as accessible as possible so that they can reach as many institutions and learners as possible. Talk about stewardship. It's key that the learner is able to stack, disclose, and send exactly as they choose. We talk about immutability, the durability and auditability of the credential stack through distributed ledger technology, right? So a learner never has to be afraid that they will not be able to access the records that they have earned. We talk about interoperability and recognize that the TLN exists in a larger ecosystem of many different types of credentials and networks that all need to serve the learner. And then we talk about assertion, that primarily issuers own and maintain the responsibility of accuracy and authenticity. So these are some really big pictures. And then let's talk about what composes the TLN, right? So going from last year's TLN Unconference to this year's TLN Unconference, we are hugely defined by our community, which is to say all of you that have joined us, and that we see that this space is a pre-competitive space where we are getting together and talking about how do we move this forward, because it's by us all working together that we can create this future and this agency for learners, not individually. What we'll get to a little bit later too is that we have some things coming soon. So the desire to begin a governance conversation and to begin an infrastructure development that can help move these pieces forward. It is my pleasure to now, let's move on into the TLN updates, and I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Watt. Michelle Watt's going to talk to us about some of our research findings.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I'm excited to share, as Lev alluded to briefly in the beginning, that we had the opportunity to do some research starting around this time last summer that was grant funded to see how to really operationalize this work. So there were, there were 3 work streams really that were involved in this research. We were researching how to build this with equity and inclusion from the start, and how to actually bring it to market. And then also, what should the governance for the TLN look like? When we looked at the results of equity, it stood out that we need to be looking at equity as both equitable for individuals and equitable for institutions. If both of these aren't in play, then ultimately it will be inequitable for some individuals. So along the thread of equity for individuals, it needed to be free for individual learners, a simple experience. They need to be able to trust that the credentials are valid and secure, as well as the norm. So this needs to be the normal way to do things. Otherwise, people are going to be left behind. And the TLN needs to be able to import existing learning for all learners. So when we talk about traditional learning, that could be stranded credits from a community college that someone attended, 10 or 20 years ago, as well as a credential earned along the way from some non-traditional learning provider. When we look at institutions, it also needs to be free or very low cost or low resource for institutions to implement. Not all institutions have access to a lot of resources or grants or such. And so we want to make sure we're not leaving people out that way. We also, it would help institutions participate if this was connected to some type of statewide rollout, so that the institutions aren't doing something that's a one-off from the people who are already setting some requirements and expectations and support in place for those institutions. And then you'll see at the bottom of this slide, we need to overcome the concern regarding financial hold. So when we looked at traditional learning credentials, like a transcript, we got a lot of feedback from organizations about the way that they operate and how that feeds into the learner ownership and access to the credentials they've earned. So there are some institutional challenges that we'll need to overcome and find solutions for institutions who may rely on, say, the money for a transcript as part of their operating budget. Also, some of the recommendations to build this was to move fast with agility. So that includes really following an agile development cycle, not waiting until we feel like we know everything to start building something, but rather to build things, learn from them, and continue forward. There were a few things on this slide that we already talked about a little bit in the equity portion. I'm going to highlight this idea of toolkit development. So of course, we want to get to the network effect where this is, credentials like this are just what people use and everyone is a part of it. One way to start building momentum is to add more functionality, more tools to the ecosystem. And then this last, the last two, of course, monitoring the equity of outcomes. Just because we're thinking about equity in the beginning for how to build it, we need to continue to monitor for equity and make adjustments as we go. And then really pursue transformation. I know many of you who are in the room have a finger on the pulse of how truly transformative this work could be. And so that can be a challenge to keep the distant future that we maybe don't even completely imagine or understand yet in mind, and keep working towards that while we're inching forward or working towards those leaps forward, so that we truly do transform the environment and not just create another digital version of a traditional transcript, for example. So how we go about that, some of the recommendations from the research were really to operate in 3 phases. An initial phase where we're gathering some willing, like-minded folks together to do some of this work and some of this learning, and then moving towards a transformational phase where some of the use cases start to go live and membership expands, funding mechanisms that can be more stable begin to come into the picture, so that in phase 3, we envision this being a fully independent organization, perhaps with membership dues, other income streams to keep the organization going, and self-governance. So I'll turn that over to Kate then to talk about what we'll be doing over the next year to start moving forward.
Thank you, Michelle. So to your point, we're thinking about what the next 12 months will hold, and what our goal will be is to activate that initial, we've been calling it bootstrap for months, and I'm being told that this is not the most universal term. Seed organization is another great one. Or prototype, right? The next 12 months, our goal is to prototype the Trusted Learner Network ecosystem. So talking about the people, talking about the process, and talking about the technology that will be required to establish a network that makes these next generation digital credentials a reality. Let's go into those 3. First, we are looking for, to Michelle's point, willing, eager co-participants to come and join us as the people of the inaugural TLN governing body. We're looking for 2 types of folks. So we envision a governing body that will tackle, guess what, the governance, but also tackle the functional use cases that we have just been discussing that are all churning through our heads. And we're hoping and looking for architecture advisors. So willing technologists that will come join the journey with us and debate through what is a technology stack that we can get started with, and provide guidance to what we're imagining is a set of contracted resources to come and help put hands to keyboards and build an underlying stack, build API libraries that can make those use cases real. We're looking for folks that are, equity focused, that are interested in interoperability and open source by design, folks that are driven by the values of their communities and hopefully by the values of the community that we have here, as we've stated before, and folks that are guided by learner agency, control, and privacy at every step, to go back to Anne's fabulous keynote today. That's the people. Let's talk about the process. So we imagine the process of these first 12 months is really being 3 parts. So we'd like to convene the seed governance body. We'd then like to work on developing use cases for implementation. So working across the viewpoints of our governing body and our architecture advisors. Let's discover and uncover use cases that can help move this area forward, with the focus on delivering market value and creating this MVP for the TLN launch. And then finally, we'd like to build a technical test network and services, put the wheels to the road and see how far the car can drive in actuality. So getting into that, let's talk a little bit about the technology of the TLN as well. So there are lots of participants out here in the space. There are lots of problem spaces to tackle, and we envision this one as being the problem space for the TLN. It's 3 parts, right? So the governance layer. How do we create a functional governance layer that can create a trusted network? The infrastructure layer. What is the cryptographically secure repository and how does it work? And then finally, and very interestingly, what are the data and management layers that if we build this on top of our infrastructure, we can enable a lot of exciting things that can benefit the learner and that can benefit the institutions that are also participating. For example, wallets, right? For folks that attended Pocket Session yesterday, a fabulous example of a learner wallet that's focused on empowering students. And how about all the applications that might exist out in the employer in the skills and the competencies ecosystem? So thinking about that as the problem space. So I'm so excited to be announcing this, but really what we're looking for is for some folks to please come join us on this adventure. So you can please drift over to trust.asu.edu. There's a form at the bottom of that, and we would love for you to submit your email so that we can, keep you informed about new opportunities and announcements. And you can also self-declare, hey, I'd like to be a participating partner here with the Trusted Learner Network. There's an option there as well. But we're so excited to announce that we're going to move this forward and really invite you to come participate in this grand experiment with us. Now, with that being said, let's let the unconference begin. Oh, it's literally what it says here on this slide. Fabulous. I'm going to hand it over to Michelle Watt to talk a little bit about what our structure is going to be for the unconference, and then we'll work on getting out into some breakout rooms. So Michelle, going back to you to talk about SOAR.
Great, thank you so much. And I was busy Googling enophile, so thank you for the new word of the day, Phil, and the wine analogy. I love the idea of this work being a blend, so thank you. So today we're going to be breaking out into 4 different groups, and there will be a topic assigned to each of those groups so that we can have some smaller conversations. We want to hear from all of you, whether you've been in this working in this space for a while or are brand new to it or just showed up because you like Kate. We'll be using the SOAR analysis, which is a framework that we've used for multiple things here at ASU. It's like a SWOT analysis, but it has a bias towards strengths and a bias towards action. And that's really what we want to be focusing on as we design our work for the next 12 months. So we'll be working collaboratively and really talking and thinking about what are the strengths and opportunities of this work. You can see some questions here on the slide that will also be, you'll have access to in the breakout session. And those first 2, the blue squares, are really thinking about the present. What are our strengths of where we're at right now, and what are the opportunities from where we sit right now? Then when we get down to those bottom 2 squares, the aspirations and results, aspirations are, dream the big dream. If we're reimagining what this looks like, what would it look like? What do we hope to be able to accomplish and do? And then a little more tangibly, what would the results be? What could we measure and turn around and point at and say, we did something. So in the context of this SOAR analysis, be sure that we're thinking about not just the TLN, but all this work in the digital credential space. And then when we look at results, though, we definitely results that are beyond 12 months are useful to be contributing to the conversation. But what we're really looking for to inform our next work is your ideas about what could the measurable results be within the next 12 months. And so what would we want to look back in summer of 2022 and be able to point to that was accomplished? Kate.
I've completely lost my sheet here. Okay, there it is. All right, so in order to do this, we're going to use a tool called mural.co. Feel free to smile or cringe at this moment. As with all digital collaboration technologies, there are pros and cons. I really love Mural, actually, and I'm going to be posting a link here shortly. But essentially, Mural is a digital whiteboarding tool, and I will point out 3 things here. There's an outline button in your upper right-hand corner when we get you in there that is going to help you sort of move around. And then and it's basically just a place where you can add stickies. So navigate with your Zoom box to get moved around the space, and then all you have to do is double click to add ideas to our boards. I will, as I am doing my last configurations here, Michelle, I would like for you to help me invite our folks. So we've taken a dynamic approach to our breakouts, and in order to make sure that the breakouts are intimate and focused, we've adjusted a little bit about how many breakout rooms we'll have. But Michelle, I'm wondering if you can help me introduce our breakout folks.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So we'll have 4 different rooms. Phil Long will be helping to facilitate the conversation around technologies in one of the breakout rooms. You'll get to choose which. And so Phil, do you want to give a quick 1-minute overview of what people can expect in that group?
Sure, excuse me. The technology breakout group is, as Michelle said, is going to focus on the underlying technologies that support the vision of the TLN. Questions that are fair game here involve things around interoperability, pros and cons of different types of platforms, different types of technology families like blockchains, DAGs, distributed acyclic graphs, and other technologies. Encryption approaches, standards and standard stacks, and where does this all live and who's responsible for it from a technical point of view? Okay,
fantastic.
Kate or Michelle?
Yes, fantastic, thank you. So then another one of the options will be learner empowerment. And I know there were a few comments in the chat about how passionate we all are for learner empowerment. So Chris, do you want to give an advertisement for the conversation that'll be happening in there?
Yeah, I'm a total homer for learner empowerment, right? This is exciting because the learner exists at the center of this work. And so in our breakout session, we're going to be wanting to talk about how we can design both the curation and the disclosure of these lifelong learning achievements, and how best to empower learners to present themselves in the way that they wish, right? To promote that agency. And and then we want to get into perhaps some of the critical side of that, right? Like, when does personal control of verifiable achievements become ambiguous, or in some cases even disingenuous? And then we also want to think through how we can best support the self-expression of our learners by providing absolute clarity around their accomplishments as learners, and how to incorporate that into their sense of self and action.
Great, thank you. And then we're smushing 2 conversations together. We think they're well aligned. So we'll have Taylor give us a couple words about privacy, and then Mina about digital identity.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I get the rather messy and often a political topic of privacy, but it's one that's near and dear to me. And I think most of the chat will be sort of an extension to, for those that saw Anne's keynote, I think this idea of privacy not being about secrecy, but really being about sort of freedom and control. I think we'll dive into that. So a couple posing questions here to get your brain sort of moving that direction. In a world of sort of big data and blockchains, QAnon and crypto, want to consider whether it's possible for students and institutions to sort of have their cake and eat it too. And by that I mean, can we enable both greater individual learner agency and privacy, and also prioritize anonymized, aggregate big data insights. And so that's sort of one layer. And then the second, if that's the case, how might we enable disclosure options that allow learners to selectively broadcast information to employers, to institutions, in order to unlock sort of personally relevant value. So going to dive into, those that know me, I'm not afraid to sort of scratch at the edges of some of the more controversial. So yeah.
And if we carry that loop forward, it actually goes straight from how do we make sure they know and know how to use it to actually within their identity, know what the implications are, understand how to actually enable our learners to be able to then actively use, going right back to agency, their identity. And within that, recognizing the complexity of digital identity. How does it evolve with the learner? How do we make sure that it has the flexibility such that it remains enabling rather than a barrier and a hurdle? And how do we continue to think about that flexibility that's needed, the complexity that it entails, without getting bogged down in how to technically make digital identity work, which is so important, but it's only as important as its function.
Great, thank you. And then I will be hanging out with Anik, where we'll be talking about value proposition. Anik.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anik Pati, and I'm a Senior Director for Trusted Learner and Community College Partnerships with Academic Alliances at ASU. So it makes sense that I'm working with Michelle on the value proposition of the TLN. And in our breakout room, unconference participants will be brainstorming and collaborating to think through the value proposition of the Trusted Learner Network and digital credentials with the SOAR model. What are the potential strengths of the TLN, the opportunities, the aspirations, and what results do we want to see from the TLN overall for everybody involved? So to frame our discussion, we'll be considering questions like how can digital high data credentials benefit learners, education organizations, and employers? How can credential networks such as the TLN benefit the same audiences? Which problems might lifelong verifiable credentials solve, and would other problems be created? Is there signal value or a cause that could be explored? In particular, attributes of the TLN that could be valuable to institutions and employers and the users, right? Everybody involved. And perhaps have new attributes come to light as valuable as a part of this group. So look forward to seeing you.
All right, fabulous. So those will be our breakout rooms. I'm seeing some action in Mural. And again, just one more time, want to reemphasize, in the upper right-hand corner of your Mural screen, you're going to see a little square icon that looks like a little teeny tiny outline. If you click on that, it'll take you to an outline, and that should allow you to sort of fast move into the particular sections that you're going for. And then it's just a double click to add a post-it. But what we'll do now, Deepak, if you don't mind, is let's open up the breakout room. So again, go deep. Let's let the conversation go where you want. We have fabulous facilitators in each of these rooms, and really looking forward to opening up this space for talk about how we move digital credentials forward. So Deepak, how do we go ahead and do that? I will stop sharing. Guess that's
the rooms are open,
start.
so they can start it.
All right, so yeah, click down into your breakout room section in the bottom right-hand corner, and you should be able to jump right in. And movement is allowed in the plane during flight, so feel free to jump in and out.
I hate to say it, but I don't see my name in the breakout room list.
So Phil, it should
That'll
say
be the technologies. Yeah, sorry.
All right. It's like a
Hover over the number 2 and click
Yeah,
join.
no, it's bouncing around
It's a
so
moving
fast.
target, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is.
it's-
Although you're on top, so you get a little bit of an advantage from the wiggle. There you go.
He ended up in the right room.
I'm gonna watch how the rooms sort.
I can guarantee good conversation in every single one of these based on all the good conversations I've had with our facilitators. It is a guarantee.
It's a pretty fantastic group of facilitators. I hadn't met all of them, but I'm pretty impressed just with how you guys have framed it. Wonderful.
Looks like the learner empowerment has
It's
no
just
one
Chris.
there.
I'll go hop in there with him in a bit.
All right. Okay, thanks, Anna.
Kate, if we don't have very many people in the learner empowerment, based on your conversations with Chris, is there maybe we hop over into technologies?
Yeah, or we could move learner empowerment over to
Value prop?
value proposition.
Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Hey, I was just making sure that we had all gone into breakout rooms. I went and jumped, and John is already active and pushing ahead on that board. So I just want to make sure we were on our way.
Yeah, we're watching here. I am wondering if we might like to move learner empowerment into the value proposition space. I wonder if we pulled a lot of folks in that direction. Maybe learner empowerment was too specific. Although I'm a little like, learner empowerment is very important. We should. So what do we think, Chris?
Yeah, I think we just jump over to value proposition and then see how we can pull that in at some point during that session.
I think that would be fabulous, and I think that those fit pretty naturally.
Should I move my stickies over to the other quadrant?
Oh no, leave those there. I think
I can move you.
Yeah.
I can move you to the value.
Yeah,
prop.
but leave the mural. If you've already contributed to the mural, don't change the goodness.
So there's a little bit of
Okay, I'm ready to move you to the value prop.
So what we'll do, Deepak, let's close the learner empowerment one. And if we can update the title of value proposition to value proposition and learner empowerment, that would be fabulous, but that may not be possible.
I
And then
cannot change
Chris,
it on the fly. Yeah.
That's okay. That's fine. And Chris, I'm positive you're going to hear a lot of learner empowerment talk. You and John will hear that there. And so if you wouldn't mind keeping up with the SOAR analysis, I think we'll definitely get two birds with one stone.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much
Totally.
for being flexible.
Totally, no worries.
All right, all good. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, John.
See you in the rooms, guys.
John, would you like us to move you over into that breakout session?
Oh, I moved over to value prop.
So you're on two, you're doing, oh yeah. Are you on like your, you aren't in the breakout room with the other folks discussing it, right?
Oh.
It says not joined. I mean, I'm happy to assign you to the value prop.
Yeah, please do.
All right.
Cool.
There you go. All right.
So we can't remove the learner empowerment session from the
No.
breakouts?
No, I
Okay.
cannot.
That's cool. That's fine. Fine. Oh God.
Yeah, that's
Well,
they should have done that. I mean, it happens.
yeah. So I'm gonna pop over to privacy and digital identity, and I'll just to check in on them, and then I'll be back. But if anybody wanders in, maybe just give them a heads up of what we're doing. Cool.
All right, I'll keep an eye.
I'll be back.
Hey, Deepak, are you here?
I'm here, Donna.
Hi. Everyone who showed up in the tech, we're all from ASU. So we're going to join, because the diversity is really necessary. We're going to join over in privacy and digital identity.
Yeah, I did see there's a lot of movement, so I figured out that's what's happening.
Oh, look at this. Like we've got massive consolidations. I love how this team's doing it. So we'll end up with 2 rooms.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Kate.
I think Kate's in.
I can see her.
Yeah. She's in privacy and digital identity. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we're compressing down to 2.
Yeah, technology's had all ASU folks. So
Okay.
I suggested digital identity because Mina's conversation is really tightly. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I
Cool.
think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to check in on value proposition, and I hope somebody is telling. I'm sure Phil is telling Mina what's happening there. Okay.
And I'll talk to Timothy real quick if he just joined. Hey, Timothy.
Hey, Donna, just jumping back in from another meeting. Did we do our breakouts? Are we in breakouts right now?
We are in breakouts. You've got 2 choices. You can go see privacy and digital identity. That's where John is and a bunch of the technologists. And then a bunch of folks who are interested in sovereign identity. And then there's a value proposition learner empowerment one that you can go to.
Okay, I think I'm going to jump into the privacy digital identity one. Is it okay for me to bounce between the 2? Because they both sound
Totally. There are 2 other rooms, but we decided to consolidate because because teams decided to consolidate. So
cool. All right. Well,
yeah, bounce around. Thanks, Deepak, for helping us coordinate everything.
Sure. No worries.
If there's you might want to switch up a slide. If there's a slide when we get back together. Is there some form of a report out kind of thing? There is, but it's it doesn't assume that we've got 5 sessions, so we're fine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll try to get. I mean, we'll have the full report of the participants if that's what you're looking for. But
Oh, I was just if there was a slide where each group was called out, then the slide doesn't work. But there is no slide that does that, so
yeah,
we're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know if I have to pause the recording or not, but I'll just keep going.
I think it's still recording.
Okay. But I don't think it's recording the breakout sessions.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can do that. Can you?
No, I don't think so. It's just a main session that gets recorded. It's fine. They're going to edit that out. Hi, Emily.
Hi there, Emily. You're joining us as we are working in some breakout sessions to talk about digital credentials. I'm wondering if you'd like to come in and join one of our breakout sessions. We're focusing either on sort of digital identity or we're focusing on what's the value proposition. Okay. Did she just jump into one or did she leave?
Yeah, I think she probably.
She bailed. Yeah, well, good for her.
How's it going there?
It seems to be going all right. We've got people are, I think, trying to pick up steam in the breakout sessions, you know, as to like how the sessions should fold out. So,
And And these are what, 30 minutes? So how long is the session?
So we go until 11:30, I think, for this. So maybe I should send out a notice that's
Well, I mean, 11:30 is when it's supposed to end.
11:45.
Yeah. So are we, I mean, just let me know when to close the rooms.
Yeah, I don't think we should pull the rooms back until like 11:30.
Okay, sounds good. Unless, I mean, they kind of run out of ideas.
I think I'm gonna broadcast a message to all rooms and say, remember folks, since we're unconferencing,
Are you typing it or you want me to type it?
yeah, I'm gonna type it.
All right.
Do we want to stop recording in this main session, or does it matter to you?
I can pause it, but
Pause it. Yeah.
Let me pause it because that's sort of we're talking and whether it records the breakout sessions or not. But
Hi, everybody. Okay, we're waiting for Zoom. This is the virtual extension, I guess, of walking back from whatever side room you ended up in back to the main room. I don't know. It's so funny. Zoom is such a hoot. Here we are. We're pulling people back. So I wanted to pull folks back. We ended up in a couple of tight, intimate groups, and actually I think that's fabulous. And so I wanted to give each section 5 minutes to talk about sort of what are some big ideas that you think you would be beneficial for everybody to hear. And actually I will turn it over to maybe Mina, Taylor, and Phil first to talk to us a little bit about well, sorry, I'm maybe goofed up here. Michelle, who do we end up with? I'm all wrapped up.
I love how like an unconference this was because people went to different groups merged, and those ideas made that conversation even better. So I know in our value proposition conversation, we also had learner empowerment. So Chris was with us. And we had some great conversation.
So let's start there with the learner empowerment and value proposition. So what were some big ideas that came out of that conversation? Anybody can speak up, which means nobody will. Who would like to go?
One theme that came up, we captured a lot of specifics on the chart. I will say a theme that seemed reoccurring was that we're solving a technical challenge, but we're also solving an adaptive challenge of behind the people and the customs and the expectations when our conversation got a little too focused on higher education and how messy we are right now to get to this vision that we have, we were reminded, oh, it's not just you, business is messy too. These job descriptions don't match well from title to title. So, but that was an underlying theme, is that we're going to have to go at this from both the technical and the broader functional way. And so honing in on the value proposition for learners and organizations is important. And then communicating through that through story is what we talked about being powerful. I took a quote and put it on our sheet from Chris of, data doesn't change minds, stories do. So that seemed like a great result over the next 12 months, even like how, along with some of the technical challenges that we're doing, how can we do better at storytelling to get people on board and buying into this vision?
Chris is clapping. Anik, Farrick, Chris, or do we can just have this all in a group? I see Phil Long just unmuted. Phil, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, Chris is always good for that synthetic quote. That's absolutely spot on. So I do think that the storytelling side of this trumps everything. And bad choice of an adjective. But nevertheless, it is, I think, critical to be able to communicate this to people from other than technical sides of the fence. And one of the things I think Mina and Taylor can talk about is the value proposition overlap between the identity and the ability to express one's multiple digital lives in a way that keeps them both separate and private. That's fodder for a wonderful set of stories, particularly for people that are already at the intersection of multiple lives, whether they're migrants or immigrants, or whether they're from other cultures or whatever, where even the expression of them with straightforward intent is confusing to people that aren't familiar with their culture.
And Phil, you were in a technologies group, right? I mean,
we moved because of the composition of it being as happenstance has it, almost all ASU folks, into the identity and privacy one.
So maybe Mina or Taylor, could you talk to us more? That multiple digital identities, multiple human identities is like a game-changing concept. So talk to us more about that.
Do you want me to go first, Taylor?
I was intently watching the mute, and then you came off. Yeah, please go ahead.
I think the biggest conversation that kind of came up was the reality that any one of us might interact with someone who has their digital identity out there in a specific space and time, and how do we make sure that that identity is as flexible as the person who's trying to be attached to it and who wants to be able to use that in their way. So the utility should be as agile and evolving as the person. Now, on the flip side, we talked a little bit about folks who might not be able to attach to an identity like that for a variety of reasons, be it, if we're talking about government identities, right? I may not legally have one, or how does that stuff start to fit in? Or maybe I have a suspect identity that someone else has imposed on me and I'm kind of stuck with that. So there was that, which becomes a barrier. I think the other piece that kind of came up was, and I want to say it was Sarah that mentioned this, but like the cultural knowledge piece, how do we ensure literacy? How do we ensure access, both technically as well as like functionally? So do folks have the actual tech tools to be able to use and mobilize this identity? And do they actually understand how to do it? And then in that same sort of vein, the folks who they're engaging with, do those folks have a way to actually use and take advantage of that identity as well in a functional way? Because otherwise we're just adding to the equity or inequity divide, I should say, not equity divide. And so I think that kind of hit on the identity side and carried forward from the idea of what does privacy and security even look like of that data. And I don't know, Taylor, if you want to add on to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to synthesize and bring these together, but I think you nailed a lot of it. And I love that it came back around to just narrative. And I think that that's exactly, demonstrating why this is valuable to, to those that, unfortunately, it's, to those that are, probably not privy to these sorts of conversations. either because of the technology or just access. So starting at that level, and all the way through, and there was some thoughts around what does it mean to actually just build with privacy in mind by design, and these technologies are going to evolve regardless. Like, that's the one guarantee I can make. We are not going to just put a halt to innovation. So being part of the conversation and shaping narratives that demonstrate that all of this can ultimately be of benefit to the students that need it most, or the just the citizens or learners, however you want to sort of define that group. I think that's paramount to me. There was a quote I raised, which I think is really great, and I'll give another plug for the End of Trust in this McSweeney series, but it's this, that saying, we hear this all the time, that oh, I have nothing to hide, so why does this really matter? But I think saying I have nothing to hide is just another way of saying that I have privilege and I don't have to worry about it. So yeah, really great discussion. Like this may not have topped the in-person event, but sure came close. Really, really awesome discussion.
Yeah, I think that the privacy piece that you're bringing up for folks that attended Anne's keynote this morning was truly interesting. I mean, one of the first slides that she came up with as a privacy expert out in the world was the excuse that I have nothing to hide is not the point of privacy. Like, if we're coming at it from that angle, we have completely missed the point. So it's 11:40. And I just wanted to give you guys a couple updates about what to expect next. But before we do that, any final words from facilitators or people participating in the group?
Yeah.
The seats with any?
Yeah, I'd love to kind of report out on our group a little more too. It was just such an active, wonderful conversation. For the strengths, the first thing that came up was imagination, which I think in our case points to innovation, right? Thinking beyond the traditional confines, and thinking beyond, for example, higher ed as being individual silos, but being more interconnected as a network and working together on an emerging technology like digital credentials is a definite strength of this project. Also, building a model on equity and involving community college partners is a strength as well. For opportunities, kind of a consolidation of what we were talking about was, how do we make learners care about having agency, for example, right? Making direct connections for students to the job market is an opportunity, making individual classes valuable and not just an entire degree, and encouraging skills-based hiring is an opportunity, including, as we mentioned, military training as skills and part of that. And also a biggie as well is including prior learning assessments as part of that, as well as, giving that to there was a lot of talk around the industry and career with all of these topics, which I found fascinating. Aspirations, we were talking about, moving companies away from vague job descriptions to validate competency, transparent career navigation, full autonomy given to students over their credentials, and even allowing interrupted learners somehow to show something for their efforts. That's a huge aspiration, especially with everything going on in the community colleges right now. Results, as Michelle mentioned, we need to do more storytelling. A result of equity and mobility, having found the financial value to this product for all involved, learners, schools, industry, would be a wonderful result, so that it will actually move forward. For example, schools using transfer fees in operating budgets, if we can find the value to these schools to change this, it would be a huge result. Finding the equivalent for this for industry, for example. And just the advent of competency-based jobs ecosystems that is more objective, equitable, and empowering of individuals. All of those results would be pretty amazing. So thank you to my group. That was fantastic.
Fabulous, Anik. Thank you so much for reporting out. And here's what we're going to do a little bit in the future. So I just want you to know that the contributions, we will not just put those into a black hole. Those will not just end up on my mural account until the end of time. We have some plans to publish some content off these SOAR analyses. So just sort of clean them up and coagulate them and share them out, because I think that they can be valuable artifacts for everybody in the community to reflect on their work, and reflect on the work of the TLN and other networks and initiatives around here. I'm going to plug again, this will be the second to last time. Please visit trust.asu.edu. You can sign up for general news and updates as we move forward, and we'll share out as we continue to move forward. Oh man. Last plug here, if you're interested in joining the TLN as a participating partner, as an architecture advisor, as a member of our governing body, please again, trust.asu.edu, and you can actually select becoming formally involved as an interest point when you submit your information. And if you've already submitted before and you're saying, hey, actually, this is me, submit it again, that's fine. I promise I won't send you to the emails. I don't think Outlook will allow me to do that. And then finally, just to end on a super bright note, please join me in thanking our fabulous facilitators, Phil Long, Chris Rice, Taylor Kendall, Mina Naik, and Michelle Watt and Anik Pettit. Thank you all so much for participating with us. We're so appreciative on behalf of everybody over here as TLN hosts and ASU and the whole group. You guys are fabulous, and really thanks to everybody in the community. This has been a tremendous follow-up. Again, look for Unconference in 2022. Let's actually get together. We'll host another reception. It'll be fabulous. But again, thank you guys so much. I will, let's drop into the chat the link back to the big, I've completely lost my Zoom. Okay, there it is. Get out of here, stop sharing. Okay, I'm gonna drop into the chat, the Zoom, to go back to the big thing for Donna's last 15 minutes. Please join us in closing out the Digital Trust Summit. And thank you guys again.
Thanks, everyone.